Hiya. So I want to talk to you today about the power of consistency and the power of habit. I'm listening to an audiobook just now called The Power of Habit, which explains all the reasons why habit is good and why it's bad. I just want to quickly touch on this for you guys because it's something that I'm quite fascinated by. Because for example, there's some people that I work with that will not be seen in the gym. They just will not do exercise, they hate it, they'll quite happily sit on the couch and watch Netflix for 4 or 5 hours every night, and they'll eat crap just constantly. Whereas someone like myself, I quite like going to the gym. I'll go 4 or 5 times a week. I tend not to eat a lot of crap. It's always fascinating with why people do things differently. And this book, now that I've started to get into it, is actually explaining a lot of this and why things happen, and more importantly why they don't. So this is obviously really powerful if you can get into good habits when you're doing any survival or your prepping stuff, and it's going to help you massively and pay dividends in the future. So I'm just going under a bridge, hence why it's all dark. So I want to just rewind a little bit of a biology lesson, and this is really simple stuff, so don't panic, I'm not going into it really in depth. Basically, there's a part of your brain called the basal ganglia, which sits really deep down in the middle of your brain. And this is from thousands and millions of years of evolution. So this was here way before the outer brain, which is the human part of the brain. So this is what's known as the reptilian part of the brain, or part of that part of the brain. And this is where habits are formed, and this is where habits start, and this is where you build them. And there's examples of this when they put people in MRI scanners, or when they do it with animals, that when they start to do things repetition over and over and over again, this part of the brain fires up, and it basically hard codes these things into your brain. So one of the things that they talk about in this book, and one of the ways that they explain this, is they talk about rats, and they put these rats and they put them in a very simple maze, and they put them behind a screen, and then they let the rats out, and the maze is in a T shape, so it goes up, they can turn left, they can turn right. If they turn left, there's a piece of chocolate there for them. So the rats will go along this maze. Eventually they find the chocolate, they register it, they eat it. They then repeat this experiment 4 or 5 times, and by the 5th or 6th time the rat just knows what it is. Straight away it comes out, it's formed the habit, it goes out, turns left, eats the chocolate. When they then look at these rats, so they put tiny little electrodes in their brains, they can see what part of the brain is firing. It's the basal ganglia. So this doesn't just happen in humans. This doesn't just happen in animals. This happens in humans as well. An example they give in this book is an elderly man called Eugene, and he ends up with a brain injury, and the part of his brain that's damaged is the basal ganglia. So when he goes for some of his checkups, when he's speaking to the doctors, he'll introduce himself when he goes into the room. Hi, my name's Eugene. Oh, you've got a computer. Oh, I used to work in computers years ago. And he basically repeats the same story over and over and over and over again. And this is because of damage to his brain. So he can't learn new things. He doesn't learn that he's just spoken to this person, or that he's met this person before. And he struggles with a lot of these things. But interestingly, when he goes home, so he lives with his wife, when he goes home, when he is asked, when the doctors are in his house, do you know where the kitchen is? Can you talk to me as to where the kitchen is? Then he struggles, he can't tell them. He has no clue where the kitchen is. But then when they ask a slightly different question and they say something like, if you wanted to make something to eat, what would you do? He gets up and he walks to the kitchen, he opens the cupboard, and he points to a tin of beans and said, I would have those. So this is where the researchers are looking at this, and long story short, the basal ganglia, you can form habits even when there's damage to the brain and other parts. So why is this important? Why does this affect you? Why am I droning on about this? In very simple terms, there's a lot of things that you do in your brain day to day that you don't realise that foster this whole habit forming and the power of this. When you get up in the morning, you don't have to think about brushing your teeth. You don't have to think about tying your shoelaces. You don't have to think about how you would walk out your house to get into the car. You just do it. It just happens. You don't think about how you start the car. Before you know it, the car started. You've just put the keys in and off you go. These are things that are habit. Now, the reason this is so powerful, once you form a habit in your brain, your brain no longer has to put any sort of thought towards it. It just happens automatically. And perhaps the biggest way you can demonstrate this, if you think of someone like Navy SEALs, for example, when they're doing room clearance, so when they want to get some hostages that are held captive somewhere, they don't think about what they're doing. They will go in, they will have all their drills absolutely squared away. They know exactly what they're doing. They know when they get to the door what they're doing. They'll all stack up in the door. The last man will tap the man in front of him, the man in front of him, and the man in front of him. So when the first guy's there, they will then get the flashbang, they'll put it over the guy's shoulder so he knows that they're ready to go. They'll then tap him and off they go. Everything just happens. There's no thought required in it. When they get into the doorway, one of them will turn right, one will turn left, one will go straight into the room. No thought process required. If there's bad guys, they will shoot them there and then if they're a threat. If they get a stoppage without thinking, they'll bring the main weapon down, they will pull the sidearm, they will fire, they will clear whatever the threat is to them, then they will clear the weapon. None of this requires any active thought. This is all done subconsciously. It's because the basal ganglia, they have this in their basal ganglia as a habit that is formed, that they've went over and over and over and over and over. So for you then, when you're starting to do a lot of these skills that you're trying to master or new things that you're trying to learn, repetition is the key. If you can form a habit with this, when the chips are down and you have to react to something that you haven't necessarily seen exactly before, your brain will go to the basal ganglia. It will try and look through this little filing system that you have here and look at things that fit the bill as close as they can. So if it's something like how you would counter a threat, if someone jumps in front of you with a gun, if you practiced 100 times disarming someone with a gun at arm's length, if someone does that to you, you won't even think, it'll be instinctual. You will act, not react, because it will be a subconscious thought rather than just a reaction of whoa and freeze. This also means if someone was to jump in front of you with a knife, although you don't necessarily have the right flowchart in your head, in the basal ganglia, your brain will pull out the one that's closest to what would help you in that situation. So if you've got the disarm the gun flowchart and it's in there, if someone jumps out in front of a knife, guess what you're more than likely going to do? You're going to go through the same motions that as you would with a gun, but you're going to do it with a knife, which will probably see you okay and get you through that situation. So to summarise, basically, anything you can do that you want to learn, you want to make sure you know it, make sure it's going to work for you every time, get into the habit of doing it over and over and over so it becomes a habit and it's something that you don't think about. Then when the chips are down, shit happens, you need to react. You won't react, you will act, but you will do it subconsciously, which means it's going to be fast, it's going to be instinctual, and the chances are it's going to be the right thing that you're going to do. So I'll just remind you the name of that book. It is The Power of Habit, and I can't remember who writes it. Hold on.